Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
Hey initiates! Today, we continue our deep dive tour of one rabbit hole known as the Paul is dead theory. Did Paul McCartney die in a car crash in 1966? And was he replaced by session musician and producer William Shepard, as some have alleged? Let's see.
Chapter 26. Billy claims that a clue that Paul was replaced is that Paul supposedly wrote the score for a film that was called In the Family Way, but he couldn't read or write music. And this is another Paul is dead thing that some people bring up. Hence, it must have been done by Billy, who's a session musician who can read music. But this is absolute bullshit. Musicians. I mean, to be fair, it's one of those where he goes, okay, that maybe, maybe that's got some legs. Let's pull on that string. How did he compose the score for an entire film if he can't read or write music? Here's a list of famous musicians who never learned to read music. Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Eddie Van Halen, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Slash, Kurt Cobain, Aretha Franklin, Michael Jackson, Taylor Swift, Elvis Presley, Stevie Wonder, Luciano Pavarotti, and Bob Dylan. All of those people, none of those people could read music. But Neil, this is slightly different. Like, this is talking about composition. Like, surely, like, you need to be, particularly if you're making a score, something operatic for an entire film. Surely, you must be able to read music.
I got another one.
Go on.
Timbaland
Can't read music.
Nope.
Oh, there you
go. One of the greatest hip-hop producers, R&B producers ever. And
yeah.
He can't read music either.
Well, I mean, he's not on his own. Irving Berlin, the composer of White Christmas, the famous song, he couldn't read music either. He only played piano in the key of F sharp, and so he used, which is what he learned. He didn't know how to get out of that key, and he used it. Basically, he used this what was called a transposing piano with a lever that changed the keys. Basically, so he stayed inside one mode essentially. But Charlie Chaplin, he composed scores for most of his films, including the score for Limelight, which won an Oscar. But because he couldn't read music, he would hum or he'd basically play his melodies and get someone else to write it down for him. Alan Silvestri, known for the Back to the Future and Avengers themes. The Back to the Future theme. He noted in several interviews that was when he was first asked to score a film, he had to buy a How to Compose book because he had absolutely no formal background in orchestral notation. Lionel Bart, he wrote the musical Oliver. Couldn't read or write music. And so what he would do is he would sing his compositions to a secretary who would basically transcribe and then help arrangement. Here's one. Here's several. Okay, this shocked me. Danny Elfman. Elfman did the Simpsons theme, and he did the scores to Tim Burton's Batman and The Nightmare Before Christmas. Right? He did the score to The Nightmare Before Christmas. Self-taught, couldn't read music when he began his film career. Relies on his ear and works with other people, again, like orchestras like Steve Bartek, to basically translate his ideas so that other people can understand them. Vangelis, right? He Oscar-winning composer who did the score for both Chariots of Fire and Blade Runner, never learned to read or write music. Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer can't read conventional notation either.
This is amazing.
So, isn't it? Like,
Could you?
It would, no, could I fuck? Like, no,
me
absolutely
neither.
not. Like I've only really learned theory quite late after I'd started, like, when I was in the sort of successful bands when I was in my 20s, I barely knew any theory at all. It was very much pick it up and throw it at a wall until it worked. And it was one of those things where I thought it was quite punk rock. Like, you don't need to learn things. In fact, I don't want to be like contained by boundaries and stuff like that. And then much later, obviously, when I learned how to do, like, your scales and your theory and stuff like that. And it was like, it is much easier to play the guitar when you understand how it works. But it is what it is. Luckily, we found drop tuning, so everything was all sort of right. It was new metal.
Drop tuning or bar chords.
Yeah, exactly. So we muddled through.
Not even bar chords, just power chords.
Yeah, basic 5 chords. Yeah, totally, all with one finger. But I don't know, hey ho, great days. But anyway, needless to say, the idea that it couldn't possibly be Paul McCartney because it would require somebody who was classically trained or knew how to write or read music to record that and compose that score is not true. Chapter 27. When I stepped from my St. John's Wood home Monday morning, 3rd of October 1966, and saw a crowd encircling the fence, I thought something was wrong. One man called out, "Where is Paul?" Although I'd begun my physical transformation, I was not yet progressed enough for me to meet the public. I was about to shout, "I'm here," but knew better. Saying that Paul was somewhere else could mess things up down the road as my transformation increased in Paul's resemblance without completely diminishing all of my own looks that might be remembered. Any in-between versions could be problematic. Saying nothing, I rushed back into the house and telephoned Brian. He said that he too had heard intimations of Paul's death. There were rumors buzzing rapidly around the streets. And this is true. On October the 3rd, 1966, manager Brian Epstein had to publicly deny rumors that Paul McCartney was leaving the group. So that's why people were asking where was Paul, because it was assumed that he'd run up for the group, not that they thought he was dead. Although the Fred LeBour stuff had actually come out by then. Following their final concert in San Francisco on August 29th, 1966, the band decided to stop touring, and this led to a complete lack of public appearances, causing fans to speculate about the group's stability. And during this break, the members had been off basically pursuing individual interests. John Lennon went to Spain to film How I Won the War. George Harrison traveled to India to learn how to play the sitar. And McCartney's decision to compose the soundtrack for the film The Family Way was his own, was basically fueling rumors of a solo career. So by the late September and early October 1966, the press was rampant with rumors of a breakup. And this forced manager Brian Epstein to emerge from a clinic on October the 3rd to publicly deny that McCartney was leading the group. But also, rumors that Paul McCartney had actually died in a car accident began to circulate also in 1966. And obviously because of listening to Fred LeBour and Tom on the radio and other people who had been starting to pick it up, proponents of the theory claimed that he had been replaced by a lookalike named William Campbell or William Shepherd, and that the band was dropping subtle clues in their music and album art. While this conspiracy gained its greatest international traction in 1969, the seeds were planted during this period of the band's transition away from the live performance. So no, the Fred LeBour stuff hadn't come out by that point. What had happened, was that there were a couple of real instances that were sort of retconned into it later and sort of confused, essentially. In December 1965, Paul McCartney had crashed his moped and he chipped a tooth. And so he grew a mustache to hide the scar on his lip. which some people later interpreted as a sign of plastic surgery for a lookalike. So if you go to someday I call it conspiracy.com and go into the Paul McCartney's pictures, if you have a look there, and let me find out which picture it is. It is picture 12, and that is Paul shortly after the moped crash, and you can see that he actually split his lip open, and he's had a scar there ever since, which for a time he covered with a mustache. But also in January of 1967, his Mini Cooper was involved in a serious crash on the M1. Although a friend was driving and Paul was at a party, the visible wreck led to widespread false reports in London that he had died, like feeding onto the thing. So the author has sort of mashed two things together here. At this point, they were just concerned about him leaving the group because everybody was off doing their own things and they had no plans to tour anymore. So the book continues. Every injection and surgery made me look more like Paul, but I wasn't ready for the public. It was a drawn-out process. It took time. Brian, Neil, and Peter and I discussed the urgent need for an appearance to create the assurance of Paul's continuance, to stop all suspicions about the accident. Only I was a serious contender for the talent and voice, but not the best lookalike. Brian felt that my new talent would help the band more than a closer Paul's face, and that the appearance would come in time. The better lookalikes were short, like Paul, and had his round head and chubby cheeks. The round head and short height were two things that I could never alter in myself, nor wanted to. But the rest was accomplished in a few months. It's simply not possible. Also, okay, listen to this. Until then, we let the short guys make appearances. One tried his 2 cents of recording talent in the studio too, which only made me look better by comparison. Why don't you have you doing the recording and stay yourself without any plastic surgery, and these lookalikes just pretend to be Paul in public? Seeing as you're never going to play live again, didn't you explain at the beginning of this book that that is essentially what happens, and it's just male models that are put out, and it's session musicians like you, talented session musicians like you, that actually make the hits and perform the hits and record the hits? So why bother with any of this shit? It does seem like it's ridiculous. But anyway, so also thus far, all the Beatles know, presumably at least some of their partners or friends. So do Paul's parents and his siblings, as does Jane Asher and her family. So does Brian Epstein and his brother. Neil Aspinall, obviously. Mal Evans, obviously. George Martin, obviously. Paul's girlfriend, the journalist who was paid off, the man who fixed the car, and at least 3 lookalikes. Several journalists also suspect that Paul has died, and during this time, Billy has simply vanished, and his family aren't doing absolutely anything to look for him. But to ensure that this is all kept a firm secret, clues have been put in the lyrics and in the artwork of all the different Beatles releases. Silly, isn't it? Anyway, the most amusing thing about it, or there was no one seemed to notice who I was. I sang, but no one heard my voice. No one heard that it was the same voice as Billy Pepper, or that it is now that of Paul. But there's a problem with this, right? So remember, one of the sort of main points of this theory is that he's the man of 1,000 voices, and that they'd already been following him, and that Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots had done these Mersey sound-alikes, and that he himself was, sounds apparently just like Paul McCartney. Well, let's just listen to this Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots version of She Loves You and see if you can notice the difference between the stylings of this particular group and the dulcet tones of the Beatles.
You think you've lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. It's you she's thinking of, and she told me what to say. She said she loves you, and you know that can't be bad.
Ooh.
And you know you should be glad.
Now, I would say that does not sound like either Paul McCartney or John Lennon. It just sounds like people covering the song.
Yeah. Not
particularly
skillfully either. Like, they're not hitting the notes. That it's off. It's just slightly off.
They have a different accent.
Yeah, they don't sound Liverpudlian at all, do they?
No,
Like,
no. They sounded a little bit West Country. Like there was some R's in there.
yeah. A little bit like the Wurzels doing Beatles covers. But the whole point of the Mersey sound stuff was it was just a cash-in. Like we know that from what his son said. It was just a cash grab. It was like when Oasis came out and suddenly everybody started talking in Mancunian accents and wearing parkas and stuff like that. It was the cool thing to do. Or when Blur started pretending to be Cockneys and everyone started pretending to be Cockneys. Like it was just one of those sort of cash grab type things.
You could hear that that accent was just not Liverpudlian.
No, it's certainly not Liverpudlian, is it? No. So then Billy goes on to claim that the Beatles were a product of Tavistock, and he says that it says that it was all a mind control product, and that all the screaming fans at Kennedy Airport were bussed in from the Bronx and paid. And this isn't true at all. Like this, I discovered the source of that. That comes from John Coleman's Committee of 300, which we discuss at greater length in our satanic music industry deep dive. But the problem is that if you're going along with some elements of the Committee of 300, you've got to go along with the rest of it. And if you remember, it said that Theodor Adorno from the Frankfurt School wrote all of the Beatles' music, and this is not mentioned at all in this book. And obviously there's no evidence at all to support that. And like if you listen to was it 12-note atonal music or the stuff that Adorno was into, it sounds nothing like the Beatles. I think we described it as sounding like a panic attack. Chapter 28. And so this is a few months after the change. And so, everything's sort of moving on. I thoughtfully considered each of my family members and friends to determine who could be let in and who must remain out of the way of what I was attempting to do. Oh, right. He's finally thought about his family. Good on him. The first people I confided in were my closest music friends and some key relatives. It hurt me the most not to tell the rest of my relatives, but they all loved to go over the latest gossip. Although I loved them all, I knew they could not stop themselves from talking, undermining my work and reassuring all of whom they met that I am fine and pretending to be a Beatle. Yet none of the bonzos were kept out of the loop. Right, so apparently even more people now know about this deathly fucking secret that you don't feel you could tell your cousin about because she's going to blab, right, at the local pub or whatever, but you feel confident enough to design the entire front cover of Sgt. Pepper to subtly let people know. Whatever. Anyway, apparently Strawberry Fields has references to Paul's death, but they don't really make any sense. The main one is at the end. It's people think it says "I buried Paul," but it's not. It's John Lennon shouting cranberry sauce. And for people who say, but that means nothing, what would the significance of that be? Surely if you're going to shout something on the record, you'd want to say something significant like, revealing this plot that you're supposed to be keeping secret from everybody on pain of death from the Illuminati. And to that, I would say drugs were probably involved in that particular decision. Chapter 29, and we touch on somebody that is been spoken about at length in the show, particularly in our Illuminati satanic music industry deep dive. Chapter 29 starts. Donovan's Mellow Yellow is unique that it featured both of us. Yeah. Apparently, Mellow Yellow by Donovan features both Paul McCartneys, because original OG Paul McCartney did some of the backup vocals. Apparently they were recorded in the days before the supposed accident, so he got onto the record, but then it was completed after that fact, and so obviously it was William Shepherd that sort of did this, put it all together. So add Donovan to the number of people who know this deathly secret and don't seem that fucking bothered. And he also claims that the song Mellow Yellow is a reference to Paul because he was very mellow and he'd written Yellow Submarine. But we know that's
not
true.
what it. No, that's not true.
No.
And we won't let you know. No spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah,
go listen to the Satanic Music Industry.
Yes, exactly. Go and listen to that. And then you'll find out what Donovan's Mellow Yellow is all about and whether Donovan is involved in Satanism or not. Anyway, Donovan, one of Paul's friends who expected the replacement, was eager to meet me. Yeah, I mean that is how you would act, isn't it? Like, you know, like I'm really eager to meet my friend's replacement. I was only with him a couple of days ago. Now he's dead, but you know, onwards and upwards, as they say. No point crying over spilt McCartneys. He called me DOP, and I did not like the sound of it. It sounded like dope, and I asked him what he meant by it, and he explained that DOP meant duplicates of Paul. Right. The thing that Donovan.
That's some Jackie D boy shit.
It's this fucking ridiculous, but these are all the little tiny details that only someone that was there would know, Brent. So, the thing that Donovan found most far out about my transformations had to do with me having physical changes. Although I was divided about doing it, I went ahead being motivated by all of Paul's stuff I would receive. I gave up what I had in love in exchange for everything from Paul. Some people resented it, particularly Mick Jagger. Oh, so the fucking Rolling Stones know about it as well now. So add them to the list of people in on this secret.
We figured they must have known because they were on the cover.
On the cover,
Sgt. Pepper's thing.
Well, you know, this is again. We now can expand on what Mark was alluding to at the beginning. Like, as we know, the best way to keep a secret is to not have it secret at all. Have absolutely everybody in the music industry in on it, thus keeping it under their respective hats. Because that's how people work, isn't it? Like, which raises questions. Like, at what point in your career are you deemed trustworthy enough in order to be let in on the fact that Paul McCartney was replaced? Like, how many streams did Youngblood have to have before he was, you know, inducted into this profane knowledge? Like, does Taylor Swift know? Like, who do they not tell? Because are there any artists, right, Brent, that they're like, look, I mean, he's obviously in on it and stuff like that, but he just can't keep his fucking mouth shut, so we can't tell him about this. You know, we'll tell him about the Illuminati and stuff like that, but like, if he let it slip that Paul McCartney's ghost was there, like that we discovered the afterlife, you know, like, I strongly suspect that the number of streams would be affected, and we can't risk that.
Well, we know that world exists on Compromat. So that's when they'll let you know. If they've got something on you,
then they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Imagine that. You're there, like, just shaking and, like, thinking you've fucked your career because there's a dead prostitute in your hotel room, and a member of the Illuminati comes in. Chill up, young blood. It's all right, mate. No, it's all right. Don't worry. This is just Compromat. Like, you're going to be very successful. Oi, stop crying. Oi, Paul McCartney's dead. Yeah? Do you feel better now? Do you feel better? Don't worry about her. Someone will clean that up. Now, come on. We've got contracts to sign in children's blood. You know, I imagine that's exactly how it goes. Like,
I think you're not the only person who imagines that's how it goes.
That's how everyone imagines it goes. Like, hey. So anyway, considering how swiftly this would change all of that, I willingly accepted the surgeries. Doctors gave me Paul's appearance. We used photographs to show what needed to be done. I already looked a little bit like Paul, but more so after the surgeries and injections. He looked nothing like Paul. He looked a bit like a young Alf from Coronation Street, but he didn't look a bit like a young Paul McCartney by any stretch of the imagination. And again, like, this isn't possible. It's just not a thing that can be done. Don, which is Donovan, he calls him Don because they're close. He joined us in our retreat to India. He sought that higher power of love and enlightenment that we all sought after. Our group of friends added to the positive energy. Mia Farrow, Mike Love, Donovan, the four of us Beatles, and others, including, of course, the Maharishi. So now Mia Farrow, Prudence Farrow, and the fucking Beach Boys also know. There's no way that she's going to keep that from Frank Sinatra. She'll probably tell Roman Polanski she's about to start filming Rosemary's Baby, although if we know anything about Roman Polanski, he's probably in on it anyway, isn't he? So, you know, but this is all getting very, very silly. Like, again, like it goes against the nature of the plot, telling everybody, like, or is that, or are we being naive, Brent? Is that hiding in plain sight? Anyway, chapter 30 is called Penny Nichols, Denny Lane, and Penny Lane. It refers to some of Paul's post-mortem communications. You know, Paul's ghost that is coming back and talking to everybody. And again, I'm going to, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. The existence of ghosts and the proof of some sort of afterlife, some sort of reality after death. I think, like, I'm willing to forgive them replacing Paul McCartney if they actually discovered that. But anyway, it also reveals Paul's clues in the song Penny Lane. But this chapter was cut, but is still available in the memoirs. Chapter 31. So Billy spent ages teaching himself to lift his eyebrow when singing like Paul, because obviously this is a vital thing to be able to do, even though they decided that they weren't going to play live anymore. I did repetitions of right eyebrow lifting. If you think that's an easy workout, you should try it sometime. Just sit there for an hour at a time doing nothing but repetitions, working your forehead muscles. It is not easy. I know. It made me want to try it as well. I could do one. I can't do the other. Like, I would go back and forth.
I can only raise the right one by lowering the left one.
My ex-girlfriend was convinced that she could do it, but every time she did it, she sort of twisted her head up and just rolled her eyes back in her head. It looked like she was like Igor, like Dracula's manservant. Like, I never had the heart to tell her that she couldn't do it. Hey ho, bless her. But anyway, Billy, you know, he's willing to put in that work. I would go back and forth between raising my right eyebrow over and over, then raising and dropping both of them over and over again. If you do this exercise night, night after night.
I can't help but keep doing it now while you're talking.
Well, be warned, Brett, because if you do this exercise repeatedly, night after night, repeatedly pushing yourself as hard as you can, you will see that this is actually quite painful. Like, and at this point I thought, sorry, what, more painful than having bits of your face shaved away? Right? More patient than having like injections of like fillers and like God knows what else in order to make you look remotely like Paul McCartney.
That's probably why it was painful.
But, well, what? Because of all the surgery. Like, if you weren't doing that, you could. He
was healing from the surgery.
The book then says, having later perfected the eyebrow raise, he took the opportunity to appear as Elton John at Diana's funeral. It doesn't say that.
You wanker.
But it does point out, notice how different my eyebrows look when I sing as Paul from when I sing as Vivian Stanshall. Just because they're not the same person. I only sing with my eyebrows pushed up for Paul and only sing with them pushed firmly down for Vivian. This distinction gives them their own look. More than Viv's fake teeth and latex, eyebrows change the appearance, making each distinct. And this is actually one of the things that they teach in spycraft. It's not about like managing to not look anxious. It's not about being able to confidently blend in. It's certainly not being able to like move your hair in different positions or sort of alter your features. It's all in the eyebrows, Brent. It's all in the eyebrows. it's this was how Carlos the Jackal was able to evade capture for so long, a rigorous eyebrow training regime. Yes. But anyway, as I say, that's why they're different. Not because they're they're different people. It's because of like purposeful eyebrow alterations. So anyway, where did this session musician get the knowledge on materials to create this Vivian Stanshall character, and why would he do that? Like he never really explains this. Like Vivian Stanshall, I'd be pleased to be Vivian Stanshall. He's on television a lot. He's knocking around with the pythons and stuff like that. But like, it never made any sense. Like, also, why would Vivian need to look different to Billy? Why not? Why didn't he just do the Bonzo Dog stuff as Billy? Why would it have mattered? It seems like a lot of effort.
Hey, thanks for listening to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy with Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. Join us next week for the next installment of our Paul is Dead deep dive series. If you'd like to skip ahead and hear all 14 episodes of the series right now, please consider joining us at www.patreon.com/somedarecallitconspiracy, where you can also listen to over 20 unreleased episodes of our now Patreon exclusive series, The World According to Some, aka Twats. Until next time.